Over the last 7 years, I've worked with, invested in, or advised companies that have gone from idea to valued at over $1 billion. And today's video is great because we're going to talk about the traits that all of these businesses have in common. And really it comes down to 6 things. During this video, we'll talk about each of the 6 things, and we'll talk about how the best of the best do it, ways that you can measure your current situation compared to the best companies, and finally, questions you can ask if you're in the interview process or diligence process, so you can understand how this company that you're talking with compares to the best companies. Even larger companies should be doing this. It's not really an excuse if they're much bigger not to do this stuff. It's just a little bit harder. So let's keep that in mind and get started with the first thing that great companies do. Whether companies are just starting out or they're in the scaling phase, one thing that you'll notice across all of them is really good management. How do you see management at the best companies? Well, managers at the best companies have very little ego. That means that they're not at the office to have their voices be heard. They're at the office to facilitate an environment where the best ideas get surfaced, and then they use those for the entire team, and they're quick to give out credit. Best managers are focused on the success of the entire business, and they are going to use their knowledge and experience to rally the team around what they think are the highest priority things that you can be doing in order to impact the success of the overall business. And usually the team rallies around it pretty quickly because the best managers are able to break it down in a way that just makes sense to everyone. And finally, and this may be the most important thing that the best managers do, they are focused on the success and development of every team member. So if you join the team of a great manager, you are going to get mentored in the office each day. You can ask this person what you can do outside of the office to get better at your job. You're going to get opportunities where you feel like you are out over your skis a little bit, but you are supported. So how can you measure your current situation compared to the best companies? I think you can ask yourself things like, do I trust when my manager gives me a timeline for a promotion? You know, the best managers would never lie to you. It's not one of those situations where you get a roadmap to get promoted and then that happens and they're like, oh, it'll be another 3 months, another 6 months or whatever. They break down exactly what it's going to take. They keep you on track, and then there's never any doubt that that's going to come to fruition if you do the work. And another thing is they develop you. So I used the example earlier, but are you able to take the initiative on meetings or presentations? So these are things that should make you nervous, but you also are confident because the best manager is there to just give you everything you need in order for you to be successful. And I think that if you're interviewing or asking questions at a company to determine what type of management, you can start with these couple questions. First one would be, what do your managers do to support employees both inside and outside of the office? I think that would be great. And similarly, I think that you can ask what the tenure is, the average time to promotion in a role. Here, you're looking for something that's like a year or 2 years. If someone says, oh, you know, usually people stick around for a couple years and then we see if they're gonna get promoted and whatever, that's not attractive. Staying in your current role for multiple years, it doesn't sound like you're developing. So you wanna focus on the companies that know exactly how they're gonna develop you and move you forward. Good management is so important. Bad managers can really ruin your experience even at a great company. So do your best to land on a team or get into a team where they have a really good manager, because it's just gonna make your life so much better. The next thing we're gonna talk about, which all successful startups have, is product market fit. If you're unsure what product market fit is, it means that people love your product, not just kind of like it. In fact, Brian Chesky was talking about advice he got from Paul Graham when he said, build something that 100 people love, not 1 million people kind of like. This is true, and this embodies product market fit. So the best startups, they have it. And sometimes they're really close to it. There's an example of this with Justin TV. So Justin TV started as a way for people to stream 100% of their everyday lives. This means that even if you were doing work on a laptop, you would sit there and you would stream it and people would watch it. And people kind of liked that. But they found that people really loved when they watched other people play video games. So they spun off that idea into its own company, its own startup, and it was called Twitch. And if you're unfamiliar with Twitch, it grew rapidly. This is millions of people spending a couple hours a day, every day, watching other people play video games. And it was sold to Amazon for $1 billion, but it is worth so much more now. And that embodies product market fit, where in the beginning they didn't have it, and it was hard to get people to just like watch other people stream their everyday lives. But when they found it, things took off. It no longer felt like they were pushing a boulder up the hill. It felt like the boulder was rolling down the hill and they were just trying their best to catch up to it and make sure that it stayed on course. So how can you measure your current job to see if you have product market fit? I mean, using the boulder example, you can ask, does it feel like when we're selling, we're pushing a boulder up a hill, it's on level ground, or it's rolling down the hill and I'm just trying to keep up with it? I would also be thinking about how often people use your product. So if this is something that people are using every day, every week, and it's a service, then yeah, maybe you have some product market fit because people seem to love it. If it's something that they use once and then toss aside, maybe you don't have it. And this works for physical products too. Even for something like pens, if you're making pens and people come back and they're buying it again and again, then it's possible your product has found product market fit. And when you are interviewing and you're looking at a company to see if they have product market fit, I'd focus all of my energy on teasing out if people love what they're buying. So how many times do people buy this? How easy is the sales process? Does it feel like people are coming back and back? What metrics are you using to gauge whether people love it? And can you show me that people love it? So all these questions I think are fair game to tease out whether the company has product market fit. We've talked about good managers, we've talked about product market fit, but now we need to talk about another really important concept, which is team management. So this is hiring, firing, and keeping people retained and happy at your company. How the best companies do this. My CEO friend gave me a framework recently that he uses that I think is a really cool way to look at this, and it's a stoplight. Red, yellow, and green. Some employees can be in the green, where everything's going well, they're comped fairly, and their output is high. On the opposite, some people can be in the red, where they're bad for the culture, their work output is low, and they're demanding more money. And you want to get rid of those people. So this comes into this like hire fast, fire fast quote that I'm sure we've all heard related to startups, but there's a lot of nuance in the middle category. People who aren't necessarily green hires or red fires, but sit somewhere in the middle, and that's yellow. And the best companies minimize how many employees are in yellow and how long they're in yellow. An employee in yellow, you need to determine if you can get them up to green with more money or a different role or a different scope. Or if that doesn't work, you need to put them in the red category and transition them out. But your first instinct should be always try and get people from yellow to green. So how can you measure your company compared to the best companies? I'd probably start with myself or yourself. Ask yourself how you're doing right now. Are you in green, yellow, and red? Do you feel really good about work and your salary? Do you feel like some things need to change to keep you happy? Or do you feel like you're on your way out and you are going to transition and quit soon? I'd also look around and see what's happening at the rest of the company. Do a lot of people talk like they're in the yellow, where they're complaining or they're not really excited about what's going on, or they're focused on getting the next role? Or is everyone in the green? Questions that you can ask to see if a company you're interviewing with or considering investing in keeps more people in the green, yellow, or red. I think I'd focus on retention. What do you do for your high performers? How do you keep the high performers engaged? What do you do if a high performer starts to ask for more stuff? We want to focus on the green and then that they move people from yellow to green. I don't think anyone watching these videos is too concerned with themselves being in like low yellow or red or transitioning out. So instead, you just want to guarantee that if you do ever fall into the yellow for some reason, the company is quick to adapt and fix the problem and get you back into the green. I think the next thing I'm going to talk about, everyone thinks that they have it. It's kind of like when you poll people about being a driver, everyone thinks they're better than the average, and it's being data-driven. So the best companies are data-driven. But what does that mean? Well, data-driven for the best companies means that first, there's one clear objective that every person is aligned on. They don't have multiple things going on, and it sounds really intuitive and simple, but you'd be surprised. Like 95% of the companies that I see, they have multiple objectives going on, and they're not completely sure what they're optimizing for. And not only that, they've used data to calculate the worth of this objective, and they're placing bets against it. And the best of the best companies are really confident in their data, so they're placing huge bets against it. I'm talking companies that are going from idea to $1 billion are placing $100,000 or $1 million bets against these numbers. They feel really confident in their growth curves, in how they've calculated payback periods, so they're willing to spend $100,000 today to make $150,000 over 2 years, but for the first year and a half, that might be in the red. And if they got that wrong, their company could be out of business. So they are super dialed in and careful about their data. Now, how you can see whether your company is data-driven or how you measure up, first, what's the one objective that you all are working toward? Is there a central database that everyone can see how you're doing on this one objective? Similarly, if we polled every single person at your company, would everyone say that you're working toward the same thing? So these are ways in which like simple data is just making its way through the org. And finally, what are some questions you can ask to see if the company is data-driven? You can ask anything specific about data, and the best companies will be able to answer it. I'd start at a surface level. What's the one thing that you all are working on? Maybe you ask, what is the value of this? What are growth strategies and priorities based on these numbers? And if they won't tell you specifics, how they answer the question will give you some sense. Okay, enough about data. Having the last 4 things is going to make this one much easier for companies to do well, and that is understanding the priorities that matter. Put more simply, the best companies make the right bets. So there are so many things that a company can be working on at any given time. You can be redoing your product, improving your app, changing your growth strategy, adding influencer marketing. And the best companies sift through all these different things that they could be doing, and they prioritize the most important things, and they bet on them. So think about your company right now. What are the biggest initiatives that are happening right now at the company? Are you redoing your product? Are you launching a new growth channel? Are you adding a whole sales team? And how's that going? How's that going in terms of the objective that you're working toward? And then how much time is this taking? If this is taking a ton of time and the bet has been going on for months or even a year, well, then you're probably not prioritizing the right way. So questions that I would ask during an interview. What are some of the biggest priorities at the company right now and why? This is so that you get a sense for the bets that they're taking and the logic that they're using to determine these types of bets. And then also, what are your priorities in the next 3 to 6 months? And from here, you're getting a sense for if there's dominoes going on. So does one bet lead to another one? Oh, in the next 3 to 6 months, when the sales team that we're bringing on now does really well, then we're going to add more people. That's not a great way to think about this because there's conditions that are involved. You need this one thing to pay out before you get to the next thing. So instead, I'd get a sense for how they're thinking about all the different priorities and if there are some fail-safes in play. If this works, then we're going to keep doing this. If this doesn't work, we're going to pivot and we're going to do this type of thing. Honestly, I was going to call this video the 5.5 reasons startups succeed. And it's not because this last reason is half as important as the other ones. It's just because this last reason is part of all of the other 5 that we've talked about. And it is moving quickly. The best startups move quickly. They are rocket ships. Their growth goes up, their headcount goes up, their key metrics go up, but their efficiency stays the same. And I think that that's the prerequisite that most people miss, is efficiency staying the same. So when you think about your company, the first question I'd ask myself is our growth going up while our efficiency stays consistent? If revenue's going up, but marketing spend is going up too, efficiency is not the same. It means that you're inflated growth. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing or that you're not on a rocket ship or any of that stuff. It's just a way to measure the growth of the company. We want to get to the real growth, which means efficiency needs to be consistent. And questions I would ask. So if you're trying to tease out how much a company is growing or whether you have a rocket ship on your hands, what are your growth plans for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months in terms of revenue, in terms of headcount? How do you plan on getting there? What about your marketing spend? Is that going to be a huge proponent of your growth? And I do a combination of first learning what the top line is going to be doing, like the most important sexy metrics. And then I'd also double check that they've thought about the efficiency piece, because growth without growing efficiently is not really growth, it's artificial growth. And I have a whole video about that. These are the 6 things that the best companies do. It doesn't mean that all of the best companies do all 6 of these things. If they don't do all 6, then they're probably off the charts with some of them. This also is not meant to make you feel bad if you're answering no to a lot of these things. Instead, it's a way for you to pull certain things that you think your company can improve on and course correct. I mean, course correction is always an option here, and it would be a great one. So think about this. Think about ways that you can take from the best companies and use them in your company. If you like talking about business stuff, please hit that subscribe button. Bring a huge smile to my face and my family's face. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.